I move notice of motion private business number 12 standing in my name, namely that I introduce a bill for an act to amend the Work Health and Safety Act 2012.
Good. Did I hear a seconder? Second. Thank you. Put the question. Those of the question say aye. Against say no. The ayes have it.
A bill, Mr. President.
Get up.
For an act to amend the Work Health and Safety Act 2012.
Call the Honourable Ms Franks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that this bill now be read a second time. And indeed, I rise today to introduce this bill that would ban any work in South Australia that would expose people to crystalline silica dust. This is not the first time I've raised concerns about the consequences of exposure to crystalline silica dust in this place, but over the years we've seen increasing warnings about the consequences of inaction, and we've seen continued inaction or inadequate action on addressing the problem. The Greens therefore seek to put an end to manufactured or engineered stone in South Australia because of its inherent health and safety risks to workers and to others involved in its production. Complete bans on a product can be fiddly to do, of course, at a state level, so we've chosen to put a ban on the exposure of persons to crystalline silica dust. The penalties are in line with Category 2 offences under the Work Health and Safety Act 2012. Engineered stone is made from processed quartz, a material containing silica levels as high as 90%, or twice the amount found in granite. When slabs are cut and finished to fit, large quantities of silica particles are released into the air. Without proper protection, workers inhale this fine crystalline dust, leading to silicosis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, lung cancer or kidney disease, and alarmingly, young workers are being diagnosed with these. Silicosis, or scarring of the lungs, is a serious, incurable lung disease, and it's caused by the inhalation of crystalline silica dust. In severe cases, damage to the lungs caused by silicosis can require a lung transplant or may even lead to death. Estimates hold that 230 people per year develop lung cancer as a result of silica dust exposure at work. There have been warnings that these cases are likely and probably will be far more widespread over the next few years. The standard response to the silicosis epidemic is that workers should use control measures and personal protection. However, there is actually increasing evidence that dust control measures do not reduce the level of silica to non-hazardous levels. Many companies also use a mixture of dry and wet cutting, particularly when installing the products. As with asbestos, there is simply no way to safely use this material. Manufactured stone is considered so dangerous the industry that sells it can't get product liability insurance. We have seen it from inquiries interstate, and I do commend the work of my colleague in New South Wales, the former Honourable David Shoebridge, now Senator-elect David Shoebridge of the Greens, in his wonderful work in bringing these issues to light. This is a global first and it can't be ignored. If a building product can't get insurance because of its risk of killing people, then it shouldn't be for sale. It shouldn't be manufactured and people shouldn't be being exposed to it, whether they're the ones actively producing it or exposed to its byproducts and manufacture in other ways. Insurers are looking at the long game, and they can see that manufactured stone is a product that will bring a surge of future litigation. It's time that all politicians took note of that, and not just the dollars it will cost, but more importantly, the lives it will take. There is serious risk of history repeating itself here, and we've seen where this leads before with James Hardie and asbestos victims. Long drawn-out court battles, more unnecessary suffering and injured workers, and then their families being shortchanged on compensation payouts. Of course, those payouts never truly compensating for the loss of their loved ones. Silicosis is already killing workers with young families, affecting people whose entire lives should be ahead of them. According to the CFMEU, nearly 1 in 4 engineered stone workers who have been in the industry since 2018 are suffering from silicosis or some other dust-related disease. If 1 in 4 workers in any other industry were being poisoned by their work environment, there would be widespread outrage and demands for action. It should be no different for stone and construction workers. The AWU National Secretary, Daniel Walton, has previously warned that approximately 600,000 workers in Australia are currently exposed to silica dust, and that we will, quote, see a tsunami of silicosis in the coming years and decades if swift preventative, regulatory and compensatory measures are not quickly adopted by governments to protect workers exposed to silica dust, end quote. Manufactured stone is not essential to our economy or to our society. It's currently in fashion, but it's really only existed since the 1990s, and we've done quite well without it for a long time. And if it's killing and harming our workers, quite literally, we can do without it again. What's worse is that while the workday for many of those workers might end at 5 p.m, the ongoing risks and hazards of crystalline silica dust follow them home. They follow them home to their friends, to their families, to anyone they spend time with. Currently, a lot of the risks of silica dust are managed by requiring workers to use wet cutting techniques when cutting manufactured stone to prevent dust particles becoming airborne. However, the sludge produced when wet cutting does eventually dry and turning back into a powder and becoming airborne once again. Workers can wear masks, but if they have facial hair that sticks out of those masks, then the dust gets caught in it, and the masks are rendered essentially useless. Dust is now dried on their boots, on their clothes, on their protective gear, on everything. You take that dust home with you. You take that dust with you to the shops. You take that dust as you drive around in your car. You take this dust, these dust particles that are so tiny that you cannot meaningfully get rid of them once they are airborne or embedded in your clothes or your belongings. You take it with you. And of course, the risk of being exposed to silica dust and the risk of developing silicosis is not limited just to workers producing or cutting manufactured stone. There are real risks, of course, to people living near quarries. For example, I asked the Chamber to think back to some of the myriad of debates we've had in this place on White Rock Quarry. When the White Rock Quarry expansion was being proposed, members of that community voiced their rightful concern and outrage. Their quality of life was being directly impacted by this quarry being in such close proximity to their homes. There were health concerns as the quarry produces respirable crystalline silica, or RCS, which is known to cause silicosis. Bear that in mind. According to the Cancer Council, there are no safe levels of RCS inhalation. But what's even more concerning is that while we have workplace standards for exposure to silica dust, inadequate as they may be, there are actually no standards for people exposed by the nature of where they live. Indeed, the workplace standards of some 8 hours of exposure per day are no comfort to those residential standards non-existent, where their exposure is actually 24/7 potentially. It took 70 years for Australia to ban all forms of asbestos. We need to learn from that disaster and immediately ban artificial stone. We can't just continue to let Australian workers die so that we can have cheap, fashionable kitchens. We can't continue to expose workers and residents to respirable silica dust when we know there are no safe levels of exposure. Control measures have consistently failed. We have to try something else. We have to act. I commend this bill to the Council.